Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here. It is our weekly Locked On Big 12 crossover. I am Josh Neighbors of the Locked On Big 12 podcast. To my right, it is Linda Godfrey. She is the host of the Locked On Pokes podcast. Below her it is Steven Simcox. Steven Simcox. He hosts Locked On Horned Frogs. To his left, it is Jay Catch. He hosts Locked On Cougars. We are waiting on John Williams, who's the host of the Locked On Sooners podcast. I thought we were going to talk some early spring football, college basketball, national championship stuff. No, we've got a big piece of news. Bob Bowlsby is on his way out as Big 12 commissioner. We'll talk about the timing of this and kind of the future and all of the things that are tying into this right now. It's a very thorough conversation I think we're about to have because there are a whole lot of angles to attack this. All that coming up on the night show.
Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so today the Big 12 Conference sent out a press release, almost article style type thing, where they said that Bob Bowlsby is going to be stepping away from his role as Big 12 commissioner at the end of the year. The most important thing to know, though, folks, about today is that the Kansas Jayhawks are the national champions in college basketball. The Big 12 has gone back to back, all right? Do not let that be lost on you throughout all of this. But he is going to be stepping away at the end of the year. I think the goal that they stated was a 90-day period to try and find a replacement for Bob Bowlsby. Just initial reactions, Linda. Your first thought when you heard this news on the day after the national championship, after a Big 12 team once again won the national championship. Oh, we can't hear you.
I know I was muted. That's my bad.
Good.
My thoughts when I initially heard this versus my thoughts now differ greatly. But even at the time, it was a kind of relief while also acknowledging that I think he handled the screw up he made happen with OU and Texas leaving. He handled the repercussions well, and bidding for a bigger playoff picture, I think he handled that well. But as a whole, I think we're all pretty happy to say sayonara.
That's interesting, Steven. I feel like you are also kind of on the critical Bob Bowlsby train.
Well, I think the timing is interesting, right? Because I feel like while Bob has taken a lot of criticism, and I would say most of it has been deserved, I'm not sure he's ever been more popular, to be honest. Like, he still gets a heavy, dose of criticism, but the way like back this summer, I feel like most people thought this league was coming to an end. One way or the other, it was going to disband, or it was just going to look completely different and have basically a lot of group of five teams sprinkled in with maybe a few Power Five holdovers. But he was able to get, the 8 schools that were left to kind of band together and stick together, at least for now. He was able to get expansion done, which is something the Big 12 has tried in the past and hasn't been successful with. And, I agree with Linda that he's never been proactive. And I think that's the biggest issue people have with Bob Bowlsby. He's never been someone that seems to see the landscape changing and get ahead of it. However, I think he did a good job in the midst of these issues. If somebody gets cheated on, you don't blame the person they got cheated on. Like, Texas and OU went out and got this deal done. Obviously, he could have been more proactive in finding out what their issues were, trying to cut off the SEC. But it seemed like they were making this move one way or the other. So the timing sort of shocks me because it felt like he was the person that was sort of rallying the troops and saying, hey, the Big 12 has a bright future, and I want to be the one that's leading it. But, I get it. He's at an older age. I'm sure it's an exhausting job, and I would imagine it's going to be a much tougher job in the next few years, even though he's pulled off this expansion, rebranding, getting new teams involved, trying to stay relevant in a changing landscape of college sports. But I think maybe he's maybe he's going out as close to the top as he could, given that I feel like he's probably more popular than he's ever been, especially when you look at the last 5 or 6 years of his tenure.
Jake, as somebody who is covering a team that is coming into the conference and seeing the commissioner go who facilitated that change, your thoughts on the news today?
I think most BYU fans are very appreciative to Bob Bowlsby in the Big 12, obviously, for bringing them into the fold. They've been hoping to make it into the Power Five for years now. It's been a decade of independence. So I think it's mixed emotions because I think there are BYU fans out there who wonder what this means for the Cougars and these other new programs that are coming into the conference when the guy who helped spearhead getting them into the conference is stepping aside. It sounds like Bob is going to stick with the Big 12 in some other capacity, so he'll still have a voice, it sounds like, inside the conference. But I think the overall thing is BYU fans are appreciative of him bringing BYU into the fold, but I think there are many out there who wonder, okay, what's going to be different now with a new commissioner taking over versus what might have happened with Bob actually running the show when those schools entered?
John, your thoughts on the news. Also, welcome John Williams, the host of Locked On Sooners. Your thoughts on the news today of Bob Bowlsby's departure, or imminent departure, I should say.
Yeah, I think like the rest of you guys, I'm surprised as well. I felt like this was going to be a guy that was going to see through the next expansion and where that takes the Big 12 from here. He was kind of one of the lone voices outside of the SEC that was, promoting a strong 12-team playoff. And so it is interesting. I mean, he's not necessarily the most respected commissioner in the country or in the Power Five, but he's done some good things. But at the same time, I feel like some of the inactivity and expanding earlier is going to be part of his legacy, where I felt like had they expanded maybe, several years back, do Oklahoma and Texas stay? What does the Big 12 look like in the future? I don't know. But it's interesting to see, and it is a bit of a surprise to see him moving on.
All right, so I've made a list here. Bob Bowlsby notables. He came on in 2012. He was involved in the Big 12 TV contract that runs through 2025. Lost Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. I think there's a conversation to be had about how much at fault he is for that. Added BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF for the Big 12. Involved in the proposal for college ball playoff expansion that probably gets passed eventually. That's my opinion projecting on that point. Just let you all know that. But there you go. You can kind of see those notables at least recently. And also the one true champion thing that Steven Simcox actually noted to us, all of us earlier, that really kind of screwed the Big 12 back in 2014. The round robin play that results in one true champion. Anytime you have round robins and also at odd numbers too, it's like there's chances to tie. So that really kind of was an off-putting thing. So, Steven, you were right on about that. I do want to say this. I think timing-wise, in terms of specific day, this did not make any sense. The day after one of your teams wins a championship, why could we have not done this on Tuesday or Wednesday or pulled a Friday news dump and done this? Timing-wise, in the greater picture, this does actually make a lot of sense. Think about it this way. This is kind of the old stuff. The future considerations. The Big 12 grant of rights expires after the 2024-2025 athletic calendar. OU and Texas will no longer be or will not be leaving the conference until the summer of 2025. Most likely, that could change. The conference will be looking to have 14 teams playing in 2024. Also, Mike Gundy's point, he thinks they might actually add more. So there's three factors here. One, television contract 2024-2025. Not really sure 70-year-old Bob Bowlsby is the right guy to be negotiating that contract on behalf of the Big 12. Number two, as much as I have been an advocate for him putting his differences aside with Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and finding a plan for college football playoff expansion, it did get shot down, right? So I think whatever commissioner comes along would obviously pick up that mantle, but having, once again, 70-year-old Bob Bowlsby being the one fighting for that is probably not the right thing on the Big 12's behalf. And also the potential of adding new teams. Not sure I want Bob Bowlsby in that mix and then having to pass it on to somebody else. You see this happen a lot in sports with specific teams, right? There's a certain time for GMs or coaches to step aside when a team is going through a certain transition right? Or pre-transition, or you don't want a case where a certain front office does a draft, then passes that draft, all those players on to the next front office / coaching staff. This is kind of the way I see this. The timing, generally speaking, makes sense. The timing specific to the date does not. So that's where I am with this. I will push back on some of the points of Stephen, what was he supposed to do about OU in Texas? Like, there's nothing he could have done proactively to stop that from happening. I mean, there's just too much money. We know this for a fact. There's too much money in the Big Ten and the SEC.
No, I see your point, but I think, and it's not all on him because there was expansion on the table in the past and it didn't get passed. Like it didn't get through. So the Big 12 didn't expand. But I think the brand of the league just sort of fell to a certain extent that it became the little brother in some ways. And I imagine some of that's on Bob Bowlsby. Some of it's also, the flagship program, Texas, wasn't really holding up their end of the bargain in football. Oklahoma's made the college football playoff. They haven't broken through and made a national title game. That's not specifically an Oklahoma problem. That's a Big 12 problem. But the bottom line is, in the biggest sport on the biggest stage, the league has struggled. I think there's a lack of respect around the country for the conference, and I feel like some of that falls on Bob Bowlsby. There's an episode of The Office where Michael Scott's at a sales conference, and he says, I love inside jokes. I'd love to be a part of one day. And that kind of, to me, feels like Bob. Like, I don't think it's all his fault, but I even when he has a great idea, like the 12-team playoff, right? It's like the other commissioners say, "Oh, good job, Bob," and they put his what he scribbled on the napkin on the refrigerator, and we're like, "We'll keep that over there to show our friends what Bob did." During
I would push back and say the most powerful man in college athletics, Greg Sankey, was on board with it. So now you're right in the sense of, look, the alliance, for some idiotic reason, like we all discussed previously, for certain concerns about the student athletes and, television contracts that weren't just, figured out, whatever, voted against it. We in a sport that's all about money, we just apparently don't want more money now. It makes no sense. But from that perspective, You're right. He was on the outside looking in, but he was aligned with the guy who did take the two teams and he said, "Oh, I'll do this for the greater good." So he was kind of in the right direction, but on the outside of the three assholes who weren't doing the right thing.
Yes, and I think his best moments have been post, the not the league dissolving, but the two teams leaving. Yeah. At the same time, like Greg Sankey, and listen, this might just be like, it's business, it is what it is, or this might be Greg Sankey, he would treat everyone this way. But Greg Sankey didn't have the respect for Bob Bowlsby to be like, "Hey, heads up, we've been talking with Texas and OU, we're doing this behind your back." Texas and OU didn't have the respect for Bob Bowlsby to say, "Hey, guess what? We're doing this. Maybe you guys should have a plan in place." And that might be across the board what they would have done. I don't know. It's just a situation. It's just business. It's just trying to get TV deals done. But I think, fair or not fair, there is a status that he is missing, and I don't feel like it's completely his fault. But I think it's a good opportunity now for the Big 12 to maybe get somebody who can throw their weight around in that room a little bit more, if they can find a younger, more engaged, more in tune with what's going on person to take over and lead the conference moving forward.
Linda, what do you think about just kind of those ideas of like, what does it need to look like for a new Big 12 commissioner? Does it need to be somebody whose sole focus is college football playoff, balance between that and the television stuff? I mean, I'm not sold on a straight up athletic director being the right guy for this conference heading into a new era.
Yeah,
guy or girl, excuse me.
You're right. I should have pitched a fit about that. Missed my chance. No, I think getting anybody young in that can bring some excitement to meetings like that is a great idea. I'd also like to say that arguing that the guy that probably makes the most money of the commissioners is down for making more money is like, of course he is. He was all in on that deal, regardless of respect for Bob Bowlsby. So, you don't make more money by not agreeing to make more money. But I think a young, exciting, it's kind of a new era in all, like you're watching the NFL turn over a bunch of old quarterbacks to like new, young, exciting guys, and it gets people to buy back in. So that's what we need. I don't care if they're an athletic director. How do they run their social media? How can they buy into people? Because I think that's a big proponent that maybe the 70-year-old Bob Bowlsby was not hitting at all.
Jake, this brings up an interesting point. The Pac-12 goes and gets George Kliavkoff, who is involved, and they overcorrect, which probably rightfully so, from Larry Scott to George Kliavkoff, who is somebody that was involved in entertainment, and I don't know if that's a direction. I think it might be a direction the Big 12 should probably go in. Like, this is the new frontier. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. If you want to capitalize on a product that people might be saying, okay, they're down on it because OU and Texas are leaving, well, new media platforms might overpay for your product if they're trying to enter the business, right? If they're trying to break into the space, we see all the time, people overpay to break into a space. Why do you think Kirk Herbstreit's getting the money he's getting from Amazon, right? There's a certain reason why he and Al Michaels are getting paid. So maybe somebody from the media space, maybe somebody kind of in the light of, or a hybrid, George Kliavkoff, who's entertainment, so kind of more broadly can affect things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, sports business, entertainment, something like that, because you have to have that background now. Because you're right, the melding of these worlds are coming together, because there is new media out there, the streaming services, the traditional TV packages. Just the simple fact you have to make these games, they have to be an event. That's the thing that you have to. And George Kliavkoff, working for MGM down there in Las Vegas, he knows business, he knows entertainment, and he's now entering the sports realm where he's melding all that together. The Big 12 would do well to kick the tires on a guy like that. I am of the opinion that a guy like Oliver Luck, with his experience having run the XFL, having been an athletic director, having been in NCAA administration, he's got a pretty well-rounded outside look at it. The one thing he doesn't have is the business acumen, maybe, that some people may look at and say you need to have in this day and age. But they do need to look and say, okay, we need to maybe look outside the box, because that's what the Pac-12 did. Kliavkoff, George, he was not on the radar of anybody's traditional list of, okay, who might be in the running here for the Pac-12. And all of a sudden, their MGM executive George Kliavkoff is the Pac-12 commissioner. Right. It caught everybody off guard. So the Big 12, they do well to really, I think, have a wide search and examine all opportunities for different potential people to take over as the commissioner, because I don't think, the traditional elevation of an athletic director, it ain't going to cut it in this day and age.
John, you must be sad. You're missing out on all this fun what-if conversation. You're heading to boring old linear cable. Boo! Boo linear cable. That's where you're headed. That's where OU is headed. Now, it's going to be fine. It's the SEC, but you're missing out on the new frontier. You could be on Netflix.
I know. I mean,
but OU's going to miss out on the chance.
I know. I'm looking forward to watching some games on Apple Plus and Prime Video and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think, Jake brings up a good point of finding somebody that's going to have really a balance and an understanding of the way modern entertainment works. I think that's a really important aspect of what college sports is. I mean, we just got done with, March Madness, the Final Four, NCAA championship game. Like, all of that is an event. And the reason that people are driven to that is because of the event that it is, with the great moniker and March Madness, and the great names for each round, the Sweet 16, the Final Four, the Elite Eight. Like, that stuff draws people in. It's catchy. It hooks people in. Even if you don't care about college basketball, you get into it in March because of the great branding of it, to be honest. And a lot of that is part of the new frontier of college sports, and it's going to matter. And for the Big 12 to be a player in the group of five, the Power Five, that, getting that big TV contract, having better branding, better marketing is going to help move them forward on that front. Now, I'm a big fan of the commercials. I think the Big 12 commercials that you see play during games are pretty good, but it's now going to have to go into a new space. Social media is a big draw and a big attractor of athletes, and how the Big 12 represents itself on social media is going to matter moving forward as well.
All right, quick word from our sponsors here on today's show. Tonight's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to built.com today. That's built.com. Check out all the flavors available they have right now. Mint brownie, coconut almond, just to name a few. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You go to built.com today. That's built.com, promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, LOCK15 at built.com today. It's better for you than a candy bar. It tastes just like a candy bar. Good post workout. Oh, he's got one. Yeah. What do you got there, Jake? What flavor do we have?
This one's a rocky road. My wife, this is her favorite flavor. I have some other ones that are my favorites, but this is a really good one. So there you go.
I'm a rocky road guy. That is fantastic. So, and you can do it pre-workout, post-workout. Like I promise, I've had one for breakfast, driven to the gym and worked out and felt great and fine. It's like a breakfast. You're good to go. Do that. Lock15, LOCKED15, Lock15 at built.com. All right, let's get into this TV stuff. Because this to me, does anybody object? Like the most important part of this is that the Big 12 grant of rights is up in 2024, 2025. Anybody object to this at all? No?
No.
Yeah, that's the most important part. All right, so it kind of bears the question. Yeah, and look, college football playoffs can be part of this, but that's kind of a larger thing. We obviously have seen that our conference alone cannot impact that. So my question is, where would you like to see the Big 12? There were some complaints, right? I forget who the senator was from West Virginia complaining about, or House member or whoever it was, complaining about West Virginia not being available there. Like that complaint is like already like so outdated because of where entertainment is heading. But I think this is the Big 12's best avenue. This is their chance. And I want to add in, I think Kansas winning once again shows you that, sure, this is not North Carolina, this is not Duke, but this is the best basketball in the country. If you want to talk about winning championships, if you want to talk about, sure, just don't put the best basketball conference in the country on television. Just care about Duke and Carolina. No, people are going to want to watch Kansas. Well, unless they get screwed by NCAA, it's a different story. But want to watch Baylor, Texas Tech, Texas, for as long as they're here. West Virginia, Houston comes in, a Final Four caliber team in their own right. Steven, I'll go to you first. I think Big 12 basketball is a great product to have, and I'm interested to see how they spread both football and basketball out. Would you like to see non-linear platforms, even though it might cost more, and be better, but be better for the long-term health of the conference?
I do, and I think this is a great discussion. My struggle is I don't like streaming. I think streaming's the future. I think that's what you have to look at. I also know that there's still a lot of people that complain about Big 12 games being on ESPN Plus, especially Big 12, like big time Big 12 basketball games. And I think ESPN Plus is a good service. Like it's not a lot of money. You get a lot of content. It's really good. I feel like for a lot of the sports that don't get a ton of attention, like you can just get that service and watch all those games. There's a bunch of baseball and softball games on ESPN Plus just about every night of the week. But I don't know what the best space for it is. I think, again, you've seen the NFL pivot to Prime Video to some success, but it does feel like being on traditional television still matters to a certain extent. So I think it's a balance of both, but I don't know what year it is that you totally make that transition to, okay, we're fully on Hulu, right? Like it's the Big 12 on Hulu. You just need to get this, $10.99 a month service, and then you can watch all the games. But I think some sort of exclusive streaming deal would be huge because it would allow people, okay, this is the one thing I have to get, because there's so many different options now. There is an argument that it's becoming sort of like cable with all the different monthly, payments you have to make. But if you had some sort of exclusive streaming deal, this is where we are. This is the place to be. I think that could compete with the SEC on CBS eventually. Maybe not initially, but in the next few years, that's where media appears to be going.
Lindy, what are your thoughts on them potentially spreading it out, doing part linear cable, this is the approach I would take, is part linear cable for your big games, and also then, make an Amazon, make an Apple TV Plus, make a Hulu, whoever, spend money on your, if they want to break into the space. DAZN is a great example of this. DAZN is somebody that wanted to break into the American space. What they pay for boxing, and the argument of whether or not it's paid off for them is it's kind of up in the air. But What do you think about splitting up the package? Would you want to see it linear, or a little bit of streaming like it is now, or do you want to kind of see it all over the place for the health of the conference?
All over the place is strong, but like putting big games like Bedlam or OU versus Texas while they're still here, or any
But how do
rivalry
you
games
drive
like that,
subscriptions? How do you drive subscriptions?
that's fair. But I'm as a fan, I'm gonna pay for whatever service they put it on.
Right.
They put it on ESPN Plus. I was like, well, now I have ESPN Plus. Which, by the way, Steven, I think you might be giving them a little too much praise. They have started games an hour late. They have left softball completely off before. So I do have some, like, it's nice in theory, but it's not always executed to perfection.
The production value is not great. And
can I comment on this as somebody who calls games on ESPN Plus? Can I?
It's mainly student led.
I'm sure you're great.
So the thing is that the schools get the money distributed to them to run their broadcast. And look, I work at Richmond. There are some really capable people. Sometimes the equipment at that level, when there's 3 people running the entire broadcast, the broadcaster, a cameraman, and producer, is just not going to hold up. So Linda and Steven, your criticisms are warranted. It's just like they're not every game's a truck game, right? They call them the industry. The guys I work with who call games, they call them truck games. Yeah, a lot of them aren't truck games. That is one part of this.
Now I feel bad. Now I feel like I attacked people.
No, not me. Not attacking me.
No, I think they should have sent Kirk Herbstreit to TCU UTA tonight, and I'm upset that they didn't. Like get him out there.
Which it's a fair criticism, and also it's like it's part of the way this works. Yeah. It's also part of trial and error, and this stuff will improve over time.
But I agree. I think getting into a streaming platform now, or we still have a couple years, but in the next couple years, and then it's not going to grow immediately. But I think if you give it some time, then you could see that kind of profit. And I don't have Hulu. If Big 12 ends up on Hulu, I will gladly purchase Hulu tomorrow. I'll do it without thinking about it. I'll
send you my login, Linda. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Linda, how have you not bundled Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu together already? Come on now.
Yeah.
I'm not, because there's too many options. It stresses me out. I just watch Gilmore Girls on Netflix when sports aren't on. That's I just watch Gilmore Girls and that's it.
So Jake, the last time I heard George Kliavkoff talk about this, I'm sure he said it elsewhere. I was actually working Pac-12 this morning, and he had said, I think the next round of TV contracts end up staying primarily linear. I don't know if that's true for the Pac-12, because let's just compare the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Besides Lincoln Riley and Phil Knight, which I know is 2 big ifs, but what actually on the field does and on the court too, does the Pac-12 have that the Big 12 doesn't? USC with Lincoln Riley, sure, it's on ESPN, the spring game, whatever. But I don't know if the Pac-12, West Coast, you're supposed to be forward thinking. I'm not sure if saying our next round is going to be linear cable pretty much is the right move.
I think that comment in particular from Kliavkoff is an overcorrection from the debacle that was the Pac-12 network in their last grant of rights. I think that they are trying to find a way to get themselves back in the national consciousness with more primetime games on linear TV. I'm with you. I don't think linear should be the focus. I just think the Pac-12 is still trying to overcorrect from what happened last time, where the Pac-12 network is still not distributed on DirecTV. It's an absolute debacle. But so I think Kliavkoff was a little presumptuous in saying that, but at the same time, I get why he's saying it, because he's trying to stand up for his conference where they're trying to win back their fans. Because I think he understands that their on-field product, it's not great. They're hoping that Lincoln Riley and USC rise to prominence very quickly, because they need that. They need Oregon to be good. They need those brand name schools to be good in that conference. But I think that's a little bit where things diverge with the Big 12 versus the Pac-12. The Big 12, they're already working in the streaming space. I've actually talked to enough BYU fans who've already asked me, Jake, well, what's happening with BYU TV? I've told them BYU TV, all the stuff that they have broadcast for years as BYU being an independent, it's most likely going to ESPN Plus. So I've told BYU fans, get ESPN Plus now. Get familiar with it, because it is going to be part of what BYU sports are going to be on. It's just a simple fact of the matter. So I actually like the fact that the Big 12 is ahead of the curve in this respect, rather than saying, no, we're going to stick to the traditional methods. They're actually being a little more innovative, and I think it's to their advantage.
Yeah, for the Pac-12, the one thing, it's a great point you brought up. They also want some discretion in when their games happen.
Yep,
They
absolutely.
need that badly. They are really dead set on like making sure that their games can happen if it's a deciding game, Utah, Oregon, whatever, happens in prime time if they wanted to, or a game for the Pac-12 North is not at 10:30 at night.
Yeah, prime time on the East Coast. That's what they want. They don't want the 10:30, 11 o'clock kickoffs. And BYU, they're going to be part of that for the Big 12 here. I'm fully anticipating BYU home games during Big 12 season. Guess what, folks? 9:30 Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. It's 8:30 here in Utah. That's what it's going to be. But the Big 12, you're right. As a conference, they want some discretion in putting some stuff on the prime time windows on the East Coast, and we'll see how it works out.
John, do you think if we see 14 teams that, with the way it is now on ESPN Plus, Fox, and if we get it all in football, do you think that even after OU and Texas leave, Mike Gundy's point's going to hold true? I'm not even sure he made this as part of his point, but there might be that appetite for 14, just kind of the way people saw it all over the place and all of its different forms and all of its football, basketball, baseball, softball, all over the place on all the different platforms. Do you think the Big 12 might say, man, we got that 14-team itch, we want to keep that? Or do you think they'll just stay where they are for a little bit of time?
I think it depends on who the potential teams might be that they bring in. If you're looking at just bringing in 2 teams just because, then no. But if there's a couple of teams that are hot, part of the group of 5 that makes sense, maybe like an SMU that has a crosstown rival right there with TCU that would create a lot of interest locally. That's a really big rivalry that with the conference or the in-conference matchup adding to that factor, I feel like it could create a little bit more national buzz too. But it just depends on who they would be targeting to bring in, because I mean, more conference games I think is more fun than playing, a group of, a lower group of 5 team or an FCS school. I think adding an extra conference game would make it even more enjoyable. I think we're seeing a move toward bigger conferences across the country, across the Power 5. And so it wouldn't surprise me necessarily to see the Big 12 decide to re-expand to 14 after the 2024 season. It just depends on who those teams are that they're going to target. It's going to have to make sense, both from a on-field product stance, a financial standpoint, and then also potentially opening up new markets for them as well.
All right, one more word from our sponsors here today on the show. We are brought to you by rockauto.com. You guys go to rockauto.com today. You'll find the best parts and best prices for your vehicle. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, $216 at rockauto.com. It's a family-run business serving auto parts customers online for – there it is. There it is. Jake's got it all. Jake's got it all working tonight.
Literally, I had to order a new light this week for it's my blinker light on my car. So that's the box that just came.
Did you get what you needed?
I did. It was fantastic.
Did you get it at an acceptable price?
I did. Fantastic.
That's all that matters.
It's like we're doing a podcast with Carrot Top. Yeah. My goodness, she's like pulling stuff out of the bag.
rockauto.com. When you guys go there, man, it's amazing selection, reliably low price. I can never say reliably low prices after amazing selection for some reason. Reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right. As we close out the show, I want you all to give me one thing that you're excited about for your respective school in the spring season. If you want to be spring football, fine. But if you guys want to get creative, whatever you guys want to do. But I just want to hear, because basketball season's over. We are officially spring sports season, which turns into talking football season. But, if we can keep it spring sport related, fine. If it has to be football, that's fine. Linda, do you have one or do you need some time?
No, I got it, but it is football, and it's the Oklahoma State Cowboys adding almost 1,000 pounds to the offensive line over the last 2 weeks. So pretty jacked about that. Needed to happen.
Thick with like 5 C's. That's what it sounds like. Like at least 5 C's.
That doesn't sound healthy.
How many players is it? I was going to ask How
Oh,
many
I
players?
was.
Oh, is it 2 dudes? Is it
Just
just
one and a half.
Is this some,
One
is this
and a
some
half.
WCW tag team wrestling group? It's like 500 pounds each.
In
They
my
rated
mind,
the-
I'm just picturing that each of those guys gained 200 pounds in the last week. So I'm like, that's not good. I don't know
It's
why.
Jake, what
Sorry.
are you fired up about?
So to back Linda up a little bit, BYU in the transfer portal added what they're calling their 500-pound running back package. Chris Brooks coming over from Cal weighs 240 pounds, and then Houston Heimuli, who's a grad transfer from Stanford, is 260 pounds. 500 pounds that could be the starting backfield for BYU. So just to back Linda up on that a little bit, it happens. So there you go. The other thing I wanted to pass along, BYU softball and BYU baseball off to really good starts. They're a cold weather school, but both of them having winning records at this point in the season. Very, very good, especially on the baseball side of things. The softball program's traditionally been very good, but baseball to have a winning record right now, that's a good sign for Mike Littlewood and his squad.
So I've asked 2 of you, and this podcast has added 1,500 pounds already. Steven, did anybody at TCU football camp lose 20 to 30 pounds coming in looking lighter? Is that what we're getting?
Yeah, we did not add much weight, unfortunately, unless you count like my diet plan. But I am excited about Sonny Dykes and the Horned Frogs in spring practice. But let me go off the beaten path a little bit here. Beach volleyball, baby. Do I know much about it? No. But I know TCU is number 2 in the country. They beat UCLA twice this week, who was number 1 in the country. They're still number 2 in the poll. Don't know how that works. Not sure if Jesse Newell is voting or something, or if like the beach volleyball.
Hey,
SIDs.
he's a friend of the show. He is a friend of the show, Steven.
I didn't say it was bad. I just said he usually takes a lot of heat for the way he votes in
does.
the AP poll
He
in
does.
basketball. Anyway, not sure how that works, but I'm excited about the beach volleyball ladies, and I won't talk about any of their weights because I feel like that's a bad plan. So I'll just leave that alone.
All I know is Misty May Trainer, Kerry Walsh, and Phil Dahlhauser. Those are the 3 people I know
That's right.
about beach volleyball. All right, John, what do you got? I know there's a lot happening for spring football for OU.
Yeah, but I'm actually going to go softball. We're 32-0.
Amazing.
26 run rule wins.
Amazing.
So far, 17 shutouts on the season in 32 games. Last year, they had 24 in 60 games. Lead the nation in earned run average.
Has anybody ever gone on the field
scored
before in a full season?
I'm gonna have to look that up, and I feel bad for not knowing that. But we're on undefeated watch at this point. It's still really going to be very, very unlikely. And if they can get through conference play like that, it'd be highly unlikely. But you get to 32-0, you got to start talking about it at some point. Spring football, the talk is they're going fast and they're going to play fast, and that's gonna be really fun to watch them getting up tempo in the fall.
So the longest winning streak in softball history is 47 games, is what I'm looking at right here. Oklahoma, if you go back to last year, they lost the first game of the College World Series.
Yeah, so they've won 34 in a row now.
34 in a row. I mean, you thought last year's team was good, damn, Patty Gasso, man. So it's a really fun conversation always. And actually, we're going to do this here in the coming weeks, discuss who are the best Big 12 coaches and irrespective of sport, which is going to be a really fascinating and fun conversation. But holy hell, the program she has built is just a machine from top to bottom. And look, for those of you out there who are like softball, watch softball. Watch it.
It's so fun.
I promise you'll love it. Also, it's as a baseball guy, it's much shorter than baseball.
And I'm married to a former D1 softball player, so I got softball's back on this. Jocelyn,
did Jake at first, but you were like, softball, and I'm sure she brought you around. You're like, hell yes.
Oh yeah,
softball.
No, I'm all in on it. Is it Jocelyn Allo, right? The star.
Yeah.
She is absolutely insane. If you have not watched her hit a home run on a softball diamond, y'all are missing out.
She is the closest thing that we've had. This is not hyperbole. She is the closest thing that we've had to Barry Bonds in a diamond sport, like literally since Barry Bonds. Like, go and look at the numbers. It's the closest thing that we've had. It's unbelievable. So there you go. I love ending the show with some softball. All right, friends, time to do the plugs. Linda, you're up first. Where can the folks find you and your work and all of its variety, football, kickers, whatever the hell else you got going on?
You always say that like it's a bad thing. You can find all of my work on Twitter at Lynn Dellions. My fantasy football work is on Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life newsletter. And then the show is at Locked On Pokes.
Jake.
Well, Locked On Cougars is now on YouTube, folks. Go search it out on YouTube, subscribe, hit that follow button, enable notifications, all that fun jazz. You can find the show Locked On Cougars on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And if you want all my hot takes on all things sports, follow me, Jacob C. Hatch, on Twitter.
Steven.
I'm at Simcox Steven on Twitter. The show is at Locked On TCU. You can find Locked On Horned Frogs wherever it is you get your podcast.
And then John.
Yeah, I'm at John 9 Williams on Twitter, at Locked On Sooners as well, Locked On Sooners podcast on Facebook. And one more little Jocelyn Allo nugget. She was a state champion wrestler at 184 pounds her sophomore year of high school, and then retired to pursue her softball exploits. So WrestleMania just happened.
And returned home to Hawaii to hit the all-time leading home run, right? To become the most home runs in history. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, plug your stuff.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
And podcast, YouTube stuff.
All right, you guys can find me on Twitter at JoshNeighbors_. You can find the show at LO Big 12 and on YouTube as well. We're all on YouTube now except for Steven.
Yeah, holding out, baby.
Yeah, just
when he's not here next week, we'll know why.
Yeah, he's been canned. All right, so you guys can find me on YouTube. It's Locked On Big 12, and also find the show wherever you guys get your podcasts. Friends, it's officially talking season. A pleasure to be with you guys. Talk to you guys all next week.